Hi, I'm Desi Cerna, author of Fretboard Theory, Guitar Theory for Dummies, and Guitar Rhythm and Techniques for Dummies. In this free guitar lesson, I'm going to show you how to play some of the verses and choruses in the song Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson. This song makes great use of several things, including major scale patterns, pentatonic scale patterns, cage system arpeggio patterns. It makes great use of hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, and bends. And it also makes great use of alternate picking, sweep picking, and even hybrid picking. This material is advanced level stuff. So this lesson is really only recommended for advanced level guitar players or intermediate level guitar players who are already familiar with lead guitar technique. If you're a beginner guitar player or if you're just getting started with lead guitar technique, forget about it. This lesson is going to be way over your head. You can follow along with this lesson using free guitar tab. To get it, just go to the link in the video description. That link will take you to a page on my website where you will find additional resources that will help you learn and practice this song, including play-along backing tracks. Before we get started with learning the actual parts, let me show you how I'm getting the sound that I use for this song. I'm playing a Paul Reed Smith DGT guitar. I'm on the back humbucker pickup here next to the bridge, and I'm plugged into a Fender Pro Junior amp, and I'm not actually using the speaker on it. I've got it connected to a Rivera Silent Sister isolation cabinet with a Celestion Vintage 30 speaker. I've got an SM57 on it and it's going direct to my mixer. Here's the sound of just the amp dry, no effects. All right, next I'm going to add a True Tone, formerly Visual Sound, VS EXO dual overdrive pedal. I'm using the right side of the pedal, and here's what it sounds like with the overdrive. All right, next I'm going to add in some delay. I'm using a Visual Sound dual tap delay. Here's the sound of my delay. And then finally, I'm adding some post reverb, which is in my Alesis Multimix 8 mixer. And I found this great reverb patch, and I'm going to turn it on now. And this is really where the sound comes to life. It just really gives it that depth and dimension that is so needed on this song. Okay, now that we have our sound together, let's start working on the parts. Now, first off, the original recording is in 12/8 time, and the tempo is 190 beats per minute with a dotted quarter note being counted as a beat. So it's pretty fast tempo. It was a little too fast for me to play at that rate, and I felt like it was a little too hard to follow the video as you were trying to learn it. So I actually took my track and I reduced its speed to about 90%, which brings it down to about 171 beats per minute. Again, with a dotted quarter note equals 171 beats per minute. And as I teach you these parts, I'm going to slow them down even more. And when you follow the link in the video description to go to my website to get the free tablature, you're going to see that I have some backing tracks for you too. I've got the track that I used, which is at 90%. I do have a 100% backing track. You could try it at the full tempo. I also have an 80% and a 70% too. I started at 70% and worked my way up to 100%, but then I backed it down to 90% because I felt like that worked better for this lesson, and I could play it better at that tempo as well. Okay, so let's get started. Make sure you have the tab in front of you here. And let me explain the key and the scale and everything. We're in the key of G. So think G major scale. And you're going to be using quite a bit of the fretboard, so think about, G major scale in several different positions. Namely, this position around down here in the third position. So, and then up here between frets 7 and 10 as well. up here in the 12th position. And then you even go a little bit higher in some different spots. So there's G major scale, there's G major pentatonic. So think about G major pentatonic. Or here it is in another position. Again, you already need to be familiar with scale patterns and lead guitar technique. I'm not going to get into these details, but I do cover all this stuff in my guitar theory books and videos, so you can check those out. Okay, so think about the chords in the G major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are going to factor in as well. And we're going to be using part of the cage system, and we're going to be using a lot of arpeggio patterns too. Okay, so here's the very beginning. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm pedaling on G at the 5th fret of the 4th string right here. And then up in the next register, I'm playing G, the tonic pitch G and the dominant pitch D. And I'm alternating between G and D, G and E, G and F sharp, G and D, or E, excuse me. So on strings 1 and 2, the part is going. And then you're pedaling on the G down here on the 4th string in between. So it's. Okay, so I usually begin this by picking the notes on the first 2 strings. Then my pick comes to the 4th string to start pedaling there. And then I use my 3rd finger and my 2nd finger, and I hybrid pick this. And that's how I see Eric Johnson usually play it as well. So let me slow that down. So it's kind of hard to see because my hand is curled here, but I am hybrid picking here. So watch this again. And I'm not letting those notes ring. I'm cutting them off. In other words, I'm not doing this. You don't want to let them sustain. You want to cut them off. And the note that you're pedaling on the 4th string, you want to palm mute that as opposed to, so you don't want to go. So that's how that's played. And let me give you some options here. That's how I see Eric Johnson play it, and that's how I play it. But you do have a couple other options. You could play this same note here on the 4th string G as the open 3rd string G. So you could pedal on that. Then you don't have to fret it. It would sound like this. In that case, you could also pick all the notes instead of hybrid picking them. That's what I did there. And that's just another option. In fact, as I was playing this at 100% tempo, I found that I could keep up with the speed better playing it like this and you know, and picking it. So you'll just have to practice with, you know, that, and whether you want to pick all the notes or use hybrid picking, that will be your call. All right, so that's like the main intro riff, which is repeated 3 times. I'm looking at the music in front of me here, and you should have it in front of you as well. And then when you get down to the next line, it repeats once more, and then you have some pickup notes which lead you into the 3rd line where you see verse 1. So those pickup notes and then leading into verse 1, this is measures 4 and 5, sounds like this. You have. This revolves around a G chord in C form. Here's the cage system coming into play here. So here's G at the 10th fret. Here's G in C form. Again, I'm not going to explain what that is. I cover the cage system and using arpeggio patterns at length in my books and my instructional videos, so you can look that up. I'm assuming you already know that, and we're going to be applying what you've learned right here using this song. So we're working around G and C form right here, and we're going to play part of its arpeggio pattern, starting here in the 3rd string. And you're going to slide into the 5th D there on the 3rd string with a little chromatic half-step movement. And there's your root G, there's your 3rd, there's your 5th. And when you play that 5th, you're going to play the root G with it, and you're going to come down here and play G in the on the 5th string as well. And then you need a hybrid pick here, okay? So you're going to have to use a pick and 2 fingers. There's a lot of hybrid picking. That's a big part of Eric Johnson's style. So let me back up for a second. So this is an interesting chord voicing here. I actually referenced this in my some of my guitar theory instruction. You know, where you're skipping some strings. I guess it's kind of called like an open space voicing or something. You've got a root, another root, and a 5th. And it is pulled right out of this C form arpeggio pattern. I talk a lot about all the different unique chord shapes that you could play that you might not have think of otherwise by learning that cage system. Okay, so after that, the next phrase is... So it's the same arpeggio pattern here. This time, instead of sliding into the 5th of G, D with a half step, you slide in with a whole step. And you end just on the D up top here. You're not playing any sort of chord shape there. So let me back up a little bit. So you've got... From here, we're getting into measure 7. You change chords to a C. This comes straight out of an E form bar chord. Here's C at the 8th fret. But Eric only plays the first 2 strings and the 4th string. So this particular voicing would be root, 5th, root, and you hybrid pick it. Put your pick on the 4th string, and then these fingers on the first 2 strings. So again, here's an interesting chord voicing that you might not think about playing out of an E form bar chord by breaking it up and using some hybrid picking. This is a real signature part of Eric Johnson's style, his unique chord shapes and voicings and his way that he claws at the guitar using hybrid picking. So you had that G shape like this, and here's your 4-chord C played like that. After that C chord shape, you play the root C here, and then you are going to bend the 10th fret of the 2nd string and release it. Then here's your tonic pitch G, and give it some good vibrato. Eric Johnson often chooses to add a lot of vibrato to certain notes, as opposed to all together. And then from here, you go back to that figuration you played at the beginning. But it ends a little bit differently. It follows the chord changes to C and then to D. So take a look at measure 9, and let me play it for you slowly. So it's... here's measure 10 now. And then here's where it changes. Notice how you go to C at the end of measure 10 there. So you've got, and then I'll go into measure 11. So you got, so that's an eighth note at the end of measure 10 and then leading into measure 11. That's, and watch how I'm hybrid picking that. And then you have a note at the end of measure 11, that's D, and it sounds like this. So you're playing the open D string, and then you're playing the third fret of strings 1 and 2. That makes like a D sus chord. And then from here you move up to, when you play that C chord, that's actually like a C sus2. Think about doing, here's a C major, here's a C sus2. So, and then this is like a D sus. And then this is D in C form. And you're playing D, and then you root D, fifth. This is how you played the G up here earlier, remember? Now you're doing it for D. Let me back up a little bit so you got. And then you actually do come back up there to G. Pay attention to when you strike all the notes at once, or when it's bass note first and then the others. You could finger this differently. You could go. Whoops. I move my hand, and I actually saw that Eric Johnson does it that way too, so I don't know. Something about that makes sense. All right, so we just left off at the beginning of measure 13, and here's the phrase that follows. So you're up here in the position of a G and G form. And you're playing part of the G major arpeggio, and you're adding in some additional chord tones. You actually have a 6th and a 7th in there. So it's starting on the 4th string here. That's straight out of a G major arpeggio right there in G form. And then here's the 6th E, 7th F sharp, and then you end on the 5th D. And you can put some vibrato on it. So it's, and I just bar here. Let me back up. This the measure starts here on G, so you have. And this song is in 12/8, but you're usually going to tap 4 times per measure. 12/8 is a way to write music that has a triplet feel to it. So it's like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Well, 3 times 4 is 12. So 12/8 notes. It makes more sense to notate this in 12/8. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but just know that typically when you're tapping your foot to this, you're likely to tap quarter notes like this: 1 2 3 4. But this music has a triplet feel. And you want to pay attention to when you're playing on the beat and when you're playing off the beat. So for example, this phrase here starts off the beat, the 4th string does, but then you play the 3rd string on the beat, so it's, and when you get to the D up here at the 15th fret on the 2nd string, that's on the beat as well. So it's F sharp is on the beat, and this is off the beat. So as you work on this, every time you learn a new phrase, go back to the beginning, you may not need to go all the way to the beginning where you play that opening figure. You could probably go back to, actually in the tab, it's going to be measure 4, where you begin with and then just repeat the parts, you know, and go through everything that you learned. Go through it several times. Try to increase the tempo a little bit. Make sure you have it before you add any more. So I'll do that now for you real quick. So I'm going to go back to measure 4. So, you know, pause this video, rehearse that on your own as much as you need to. I also want to point out this, because we're slowing this down, there are a lot of difficult parts. You know, some of these parts that we've already covered are fairly difficult to play when they're up to tempo. If you're just not quite at that level yet, don't let yourself get hung up on any particular part. It's okay to skip a lick or a phrase, or maybe simplify it so that you can put something similar together and you could keep going. And then, you know, over time, over the next couple of days or weeks or years, you know, you can work on refining your playing and working on playing some of these licks and phrases more closely. Or not. You know, you might just take some licks and phrases that you like, and you might play this in your own style or your own way that's just, you know, well suited for you. That's okay too. So that's because this is a challenging song. Sometimes you need to cut some corners. Sometimes you need to make some changes, simplify things, and just be realistic so you can kind of keep going and you can accomplish something. You don't want to get hung up on something and not accomplish anything. All right, so we left off with our lick in G. Next, the music changes to C, and you have this phrase. So this is now measure 15. And by the way, I wrote the chords over the tab just so you can see how the lead lines relate to the chord changes. So we're on C now, measure 15. And this is a type of arpeggio here. You're outlining some of the notes of the C triad, and then you have some additional chord tones in there as well, just to add some more color, just like you did on the G. So here you have the root C, and then here's the 5th G, here's the 6th A, here's the 9th D, and then here's the 3rd E. So that's, and you want to put some vibrato on that D on the 2nd string. So it's, Eric Johnson pays attention to so much detail. He's very particular about when he uses a bend or a half-step slide or a full-step slide or vibrato. So you want to pay attention to it too, so that you kind of match the character of the song. And then in the next measure, measure 16. The music goes to a D, and you kind of play a typical common G major pentatonic lick. Little bend and release there. And then and I think that actually comes in a little bit early, so it's. It might be on the beat. It works either way, and you know, there are likely subtle differences between the way I'm playing it and the way you might hear on the original recording. I had to put this together in a manner that I was able to play, and I'm playing it as I hear it and feel it, and so there could be some differences. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. This is the beginning of measure 13, so you got. And then going into 17, you go back to that opening figuration. And then from here, you've got C and D. These are just power chords. You could play them like this. But Eric Johnson always has an unconventional way of doing things, so he played the same notes like this, hybrid picking, and then here's the D. And then this leads you into chorus 1 at measure 21, which is kind of, it's like the most recognizable part of the melody to this song. This is kind of like the big melodic hook. So before you get into that, you might want to go back and review this first verse and all of its licks and phrases, playing from the beginning. And you might want to go to the link on my website and review the performance of this and maybe play along with it and just work with it that way. Okay, so now we're going to work on the main melodic hook heard in Cliffs of Dover. It's in the chorus and it begins at measure 21 in my tab. But before we play it as written, I want to explain to you what's going on here and how this part relates to the chord changes, because there's something important going on and it'll make it easier for you to learn it and, more importantly, to understand it. So the chord changes at this part of the song, the bass player is playing the chords that are not in parentheses in my score. So that would be A minor, D, G, and E minor. So if you're in the key of G, so that's 2, 5, 1, 6. You could go to E minor here or down here. And I had some chords in parentheses because Eric Johnson is actually just playing major and minor arpeggio patterns, and that's what this whole melodic hook is based on. But there's a little bit more to it than that. He's actually kind of superimposing some arpeggios, or in other words, he's playing some chords where they are not played. He's kind of playing them over there. And that's what those chords in the parentheses are. So if you played this as a rhythm guitar player, and there is no rhythm guitar on it, but if you played it as a rhythm guitar player and you touched on all the chords that Eric Johnson's lead line touches on, you would play this: A minor, G, D, then G, D, E minor, or you could go up here. So it's like, I don't think the bass is actually doing that, but it's definitely in the melody. So this is where things are going to get really interesting and really cool. And this is just a perfect example of the potential that the cage system arpeggio patterns have. You know, I teach the cage system and I talk about how useful it is. It's not just about those 5 forms. There's so much you can do with it. And here is a great example. So let's get into that melodic hook. I'm still not going to play it as it's tabbed. I'm going to play it a little bit differently. Listen to this. Okay, follow me here, all right? This is not tabbed, but I just want to show you something. So we're playing A minor, and we're going to play it like an arpeggio pattern. We're going to pick its notes like this. What are we going to do? Let's skip that slide. We're going to start right here. We're going to go. So that's right out of the A minor chord. Then we're going to go to a G chord, and we're going to go, again, right out of the G chord. So A minor, and you can finger this however you want. G, and then here's D in C form. Again, right out of the chord form, or right out of the arpeggio pattern, if you want to think of it that way. So and then you could put this little lick beforehand, and then you can slide in between some of these arpeggio shapes. you can already hear it coming together, and you can see that this melodic line is based on simple major and minor triads, chord shapes, arpeggio patterns, however you want to think about it, and it's brilliant. All right, so let's keep going because we're not done yet. We've got A minor, G, D. From here, you're going to go, you're kind of stepping your way through the major scale up to the 5th of D, starting on its 3rd, F sharp. Then you go back to G, right? That's right out of the G chord. D. And then you go to E minor, and you're going to go. So you're starting on the 3rd of E minor, that's G, and you're moving backward in the scale, and you're ending on the 5th of E minor, B. So A minor, G, D, G, D, E minor. Here it is faster. And I'll put that little in there, and I'll put some slides in there as well. So it's... So that's basically the lead line, although it's transposed up an octave and it's played a little bit differently. But I wanted to show it to you that way first because so that it makes sense and you can see how that lead line is pulled directly out of these chord shapes. You could just take this and move everything up and play it an octave higher. So think about, A minor, G, D, G, D, E minor, and you could do it like this. Here it is with the other notes and the slides and everything added in. So you could play it that way. That's not actually how Eric Johnson does it. Let me show you how he does it. Now we're going to follow the tab. So look at measure 21. These are the exact same notes, same chords. We're just playing them in a different position, and you get a different fingering. It's more difficult to see how the lead line is pulled out of the chords this way. That's why I didn't show you this way first, okay? But so let's get started. So A minor, instead of doing it here, you're going to do it like this. So following the tab, you got 17th fret here, the 3rd string, and then 14th fret of the 4th string, 14th fret of the 3rd string, and then back up. And this is this is still A minor. This would be like the G minor form of it, like this. So you're going, this is your minor 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd. To begin with, you can go, that's actually, those pickup notes would actually be back in measure 20 before it. See that 14, 12, 14 there? So you got, then you begin here. So this is actually your root A minor. There's the 3rd, and there's the 5th. Then you're going to go to G. Here's your root G. Here's its major 3rd. And here's its 5th. So you could think of this as being out of the G form, or maybe a little bit out of the E form. It's actually kind of reaching across different positions here, a little bit of the G form and the E form. So you got, so A minor, G. And you can actually slide in between them like this. So when I go to G, I don't pick that first note, I slide into it. With the pickup notes, Okay, from here we're going to D now. We're following those chord changes. And here's D at the 12th fret of the 4th string, and here's its major 3rd, and here's its 5th. So you could think of that as being out of the like the D form. Again, I'm talking about how I teach the cage system and all of its related arpeggio patterns and stuff. And this actual arpeggio pattern is going to come up again with some other parts here in this song. So from the G, or actually from the A minor, so you got slide to G, slide to the, when I say slide to G, I meant slide into the notes related to G. You actually are sliding into the 3rd B there. And then here you slide into the 5th of D, A. With the pickup notes. All right, it's coming together. After you finish the D, you go to its 3rd and you climb up the scale. And you slide up here to B at the 16th fret. That's part of the G major triad now. So, whoops. And you're going to go right back to D after the G again. Got that? With the pickup notes. You know what? I added an extra note there. You don't actually go all the way up to A at the end there. You end with that last D simply by going, and then you go. So it's. So that newest lick is measure 24. You're on E minor now. That's the chord, and you play. Earlier we did this like this, or you end on the 5th of E minor, and here's just another position to play it in. 5th of E minor. And this is actually how I saw Eric Johnson play it as I was learning this part and watching videos of him play it online. And I put a couple pull-offs in there. I go, that's a pull-off. And that's a pull-off. All right, so that's kind of the main part of the main riff. So you want to memorize that and rehearse it and practice it and play it. Make sure you get the picking right. Make sure you get those slides and the fingering right. And then when you're ready, come back to the video and we will move on. Okay, here's measure 25 through measure 28. So you cycle through those same changes with the same melody again, so nothing new here. You don't have the pickup notes this time. Instead of going to D at the 12th fret on the 4th string, you come up to D at the 10th fret of the 1st string. So it's. And then instead of climbing up to G like this, you come back to D here and you play a triad. So it's. Let me do that for you again. And instead of going like you did the first time, you go. So same notes here. I came down here at the end instead of I went. And then you're on E minor, And here's a perfect E minor bend, bending the D to E. Whole step bend, and you can put some vibrato on it. Okay, so that was very similar, just a couple of variations there. You go back up here to the 17th fret and you begin the melody again. So now we're at measure 29. It might be a good idea for you, though, to go back and review the whole part, the whole chorus thus far, the whole All right, so now picking up at measure 29. These are the very same notes that you played at the beginning of the chorus, minus the pickup notes. I just ended a little bit differently. Instead of going, here are the same notes in a different position. I end differently because that's how I saw Eric Johnson do it. In fact, sometimes I saw him come down here and go, right? Whoops. Same notes. It's interesting how he would sometimes play the same part in a different position, and he seemed to do it intentionally, like he wanted there to be a subtly different, a subtle difference in like the tone and the timbre of certain pitches the second time he plays it. I have no doubt that he does that stuff intentionally because this sounds slightly different than, or even being here, different string, different position changes it, and Eric Johnson pays such attention to those details, and it just adds a very interesting variety in the tone and the timbre of those pitches. So you can end that way as well. If you want to end it exactly like you did the first time, that's fine, or if you want to end down here, that works as well. Okay, we're picking up now at measure 33, so you're back to the top of the melody, no pickup notes. Okay, so this is very similar again. Second time around, you put in that D note up here at the 10th fret. And then play a triad, slide into the G arpeggio. This almost ends like it does the first time, except for you don't come down here, you switch positions and you do a pull off from the 9th to the 7th fret on the 3rd string. So it's, and then, and we're going to end right there. So you can just flatten your finger out there. Let me play the whole chorus up to this point now from the beginning with the pickup notes. So. All right, that completes the first, well, that kind of completes the first chorus. So now we are at measure 37. We're not beginning the next verse just yet. And you go back to that figuration that you played at the beginning of the song, though. and you're going to cut it short. There's a lot of times in this song where Eric Johnson just cut this with one track, but he would come back to that figuration to try to keep it going in between other licks and phrases. So sometimes he cuts that figuration short to play a lick and phrase, and then he'll jump back into the figuration wherever he is in the music, and it's kind of neat. So here, looking at measure 37, so you're going to play. You're only going to take it that far, and then you jump up here to measure 39, and you play this little fill that sounds like this. So playing over G now, and you're playing the major 7th F sharp at the 14th fret of the 1st string. And then you're playing the 2nd or the 9th, depending on how you count it, A up here at the 17th fret. And then you've got root G, 12th fret of the 3rd string. Here's the 6th. It's really interesting how sometimes he's playing simple major and minor triads. Sometimes he touches on major 7ths, 2nds or 9ths, 6ths. And it's neat how it adds depth and color and kind of an airiness to it. When you play some of those other chord tones, just like when you play chords with added chord tones and extensions, it just kind of adds a different dimension, and you hear that reflected in the melody. And Eric Johnson, no doubt, chose these notes for that reason. So you have. So after you have. Again, playing around a G chord shape now in this position. And let's see, we're in measure 40 now. So you got pull off there. And that's the 16th note. So it's. And then here's the next part. Here's G. 2nd degree, 3rd degree of the scale, and you're just going to go backwards using pull-offs. And you want to end on D. And I saw in a video that Eric Johnson actually played the D note on the D string at the 12th fret as a harmonic. So he went. And I actually play it. I pick this note. I pick the 12th fret, I pick the 10th fret, and then I pull off there. Is that how I have it notated for you? Yeah. You could pull them all off, but for some reason I prefer to go. And by playing that harmonic, then you have that D that's sustaining while you come back here to hop into. To kind of pick up where that intro figuration is at. So let's take a look at that. We are now into measure 41. So notice how that harmonic is at the beginning of measure 41, and you pick up on that intro figuration, kind of halfway through the measure. So you're not starting it here. You're actually starting it. Where are you starting? So you got. So you're starting it here. So you're going, and then measure 42, and then you cut it short. So from the harmonic, it's. I'm gonna do that again. Let me back up a little bit more. Once more. That's why you cut that short, because you come up here for this lick, which really closes out this chorus section, and you begin another verse. So Pause this video, go back and review those licks and phrases, and when you're ready, I'll give you that last one. Okay, so we left off at measure 42, and we're going to play that last note at the end of measure 42, and this phrase then runs into 43, and it sounds like this. And this is a D major arpeggio. Here's D. Think about a D form chord like this. And you're kind of superimposing this D chord over a G. You're getting this sort of sound. So you play part of that D arpeggio and then you end on G. So once again, that's... And pay attention to the beat. So this is on the this is off the beat, on the beat, off the beat, on the beat, off the beat. And this comes after this part. Well, actually. All right, now we have some pickup notes that lead us into the second verse. So the verse originally started like this. So you're going to do almost the same thing, but instead of sliding, this time you bend. So instead of sliding from fret 6 to 7, you're going to bend like this. The rest of that phrase is the same. And here's another example how Eric Johnson very intentionally played this in a subtly different manner, just to give it a slightly different tonal sound. All right, so we just left off with that G chord at the beginning of measure 45. Then you play a phrase that's similar to what you did earlier. It sounds like this. So comes in on the upbeat. Pay attention to when notes land on the beat. So you slide, and that slide actually ends on the beat. Second string's on the beat. Then you follow the chord change to C. So we are on C now. So this is measure 47. So think about C maybe in D form like this, right? Here's your root, fifth, root, third. That's a second, and you're going to play. So that's root, fifth, second, or you could call it a ninth as well. And that's the third there. So let me back up. Those first two notes are on the beat, and the second two are on the upbeat. And then you end with this kind of G major pentatonic lick again. And I actually start at the 12th fret, and I slide up into it, and then I do a bend, release, and then come back. Let me back up a little bit. From the beginning of the verse with its pickup notes. All right, from here, you go back to the intro figuration. This is measure 49, and it gets cut short. It's and is followed by this leg. So it's actually played a little bit differently. So if you look at the tab, measure 49, measure 50. Notice when you come back to the 5th fret, you do not play it twice. You just play it once, and then it's followed by the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So measure 50 is measures 49, and then up to this part of measure 50 is. So you have to end it a little early that way, and then jump up to this position here, playing around G and C form for this lick. The chord change is actually on C at this point, and so you're introducing some notes from C, like it's 3rd, E, and then it's root C up here. So this starts at the end of measure 50, those 3 notes there, 9, 8, 7. Now we're in measure 51. Pull off. And it's following the chord changes, C, D, so you've got C there. Let's see. And you end on G, but the chord's actually on D, so you get kind of like a D sus sound. So let me back up. So you've got, this would be from measure 49. So you got. This was actually one of the most difficult transitions for me when I was playing this up to tempo, coming from here and getting up here. And when I pick this part here, I want to just straight alternate pick it, which means I would start on the upstroke if you watch my right hand here. But I had difficulty coming from this position and then getting up here and hitting the 3rd string with the upstroke properly. Let me see if I can do. So if I bring this up to tempo, so you got, you know. Believe it or not, that was one little thing that just tripped me up, and I had to practice that so much. Not necessarily considered one of the more difficult parts of this, but it was difficult for me. And you might have some parts that are difficult for you, and you really need to think about how are you going to transition, how are you going to begin the next phrase. Is it going to be a downstroke, or is it going to be an upstroke? Are you missing the string? Do you need to rehearse it? That's how you get things down, and that's the same process I follow. From the beginning of verse 2 with the pickup notes, here we go. All right, measure 52 now. We're halfway through the measure, and here's the next phrase. So we have more arpeggio pattern here. So this is it's like part of a D, and you're actually playing over a G chord. So you are superimposing the notes of D over a G, which would kind of give you like a. It makes like a G major 9 because you have the 9th in there and you have the major 7th as well, you know. Or you might think of it like this. Is that right? So in this case, you can play part of a major triad while on G. you play part of the D triad while you're on G, and it creates like a major 9 sound a little bit. So you got, you do have the 6th in there E. So think about the D arpeggio, and then add E in there. So we left off with starts on the upbeat, and then this A here is on the downbeat. So it's let me keep going this time. So that's so just follow the tab there. Then you come up to the next position. And that's all played over G. And then it changes to a C chord if you're thinking about the underlying chords underneath that aren't actually played, but you know they're present. They're the bass player's hitting on the roots at least. So that's the end of 54. You've got, then here's 55, full bend, release, and then go to 18, full bend, you're bending your tonic pitch G. It's kind of interesting. This is a common bend when you're in G minor pentatonic because you're starting on the flat 7 F, but you can get away with it when you're in a major key because if you go to that bend soon enough, you don't really, it's kind of like the F doesn't really count. You're just leading up to the G there. And then from here you go down to the 12th position to play this lick that you've played several times before. And you can kind of lead into it a little bit like this. Or actually what I do is I hammer on. I go, so, whoops, I overshot that bend. Let's try it again. Let me back up. So we're coming from and I love the way this part just kind of floats over the beat. Like I've said before, you kind of have to tap your foot and get used to which notes are on the downbeat and which notes fall in between. And I'm not really talking specifically about the rhythms, like on what particular beat they fall necessarily, because I think that might be more confusing. You probably need to pick up on this better by ear. I'm going to back up a little bit to where you come down and play that intro figuration and lead up to what we just covered. So you got. And I should point out that I have some left hand muting going on in there. Instead of playing with my fingertips and only fretting those strings that I want, I often have to place my fingers in a manner where I can play one string and then kind of lay across another or maybe butt up against another to keep it quiet, to try to reduce the string noise so my playing is clean. So in other words, instead of going, let's see. Watch how that was me on my fingertips. Watch how I lay my fingers down a little bit. Just to try to control some of that noise. I don't want it to get out of hand. I don't want that. Same thing up here. Instead of going, you know. Hear that noise? I fret in a manner where I can mute some of those strings I don't want. That's something you have to pay attention to as well. If you can reduce unwanted noise, your playing will sound cleaner. Okay, so we just left off with measure 56. Now we're heading into measure 57. You go back to that intro figuration. And you cut it short, and you follow the chord changes here, C to D. And they'll lead you into the chorus again. And check out the voicings here. They're played differently than you did the first time. The C is played like this. From the first string, you have fret 8, 8, 5, 5. That's straight out of a G form chord. Think about G right here. Again, you know, Eric Johnson makes such good use out of the different cage system forms and their arpeggio patterns, and this song just is such a good example of how to really use that cage system for all it's worth. So here is a C in G form, and then you come down here to a D power chord, a plain old power chord in E form. So it's and then we're heading into the second chorus. So this is going to be measure 61, chorus 2, and it starts out the same, so nothing new here. Just like the first time. Okay, then it repeats, very similar to the first time. Very similar to the repeat the first time you play the chorus. You play all the way up here to the D at the 10th fret of the first string. You come back and play some of the D arpeggio pattern, but then things change. The next part sounds like this. All right, so let's talk about that. You play part of that D arpeggio pattern in D form again. Think about your D. You end on G right there. So this is the second. This is the. Let me start from the beginning of the second chorus. So you got, well, with pickup notes. Whoops. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so again, pay attention to when you play on the beats. So this actually starts on the beat. And this D is on the beat as well. And then the next part is I love this line. This is using some major pentatonic with a little bit extra. So think about G major pentatonic, pattern 2. Whoops, did I do that right? You're going to start here on the 5th string. You're going to climb up a little bit of the pentatonic like this. I actually use these fingers. And then from here, think about the chord shape G, right, in E form. So it's... And this is played, this has got a triplet feel to it. I mean, this whole song has a triplet feel to it because you're playing in a triplet key signature, but it's going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you've got here you add in the 6th, and there's your root G, there's your major third. So it's, think of it in groups of 3 like that. And then you come back here to the E on the 2nd string and end there because you're following the chord changes and it's going to E minor. So the chord changes there are G, E minor, or you can think of it as G, D, E minor. So G, and then E at the end, and that's why you end on E there. And let's talk about the picking here. I have not discussed the picking so much throughout these parts. I mean, obviously we talked about when you hybrid pick and that sort of thing. As for the other parts, you can use downstrokes. There's a little bit of alternate picking in there. You just kind of pull it off however you are able to do it. With this particular run, though, I found that I had to use sweep picking. So let me show you how I'm doing it, and I'll give you an alternative of how you can do it. So watch my right hand here when I pick this. So I go. And you know, sweep picking is when you would break the alternating, and you would like push through a string, and you would use a downstroke to play across a couple of strings and to play a couple notes in a row. So watch this again. So I go down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. So that's where the sweep is right there, between strings 3 and 2. Your tendency might be to want to alternate this. That's what mine was originally. I wanted to do this. I wanted to go. It kind of makes sense to do that. But when you get up to speed, I found that I wasn't quite pulling that off. And if you've ever looked carefully at Eric Johnson's picking technique, he is a sweep picker. Well, he will alternate, and he will use sweep picking as well. And I believe he did sweep pick this with that little tiny transition between strings 3 and 2 makes all the difference. Let me slow that down for you again. So 2 downstrokes in a row there. I also play the arpeggio before this with mostly downstrokes. I go. I tried alternating this. I wanted to kind of keep my pick moving, you know. But as I got up to tempo, I was missing notes and it just wasn't flowing. And as I watched some videos of Eric Johnson, I had noticed that he was sweeping. So on this arpeggio, I just pushed right through it with downstrokes, except at the end there. But you can try that. If you're able to pull it off by alternating and you're more comfortable with that, you can do that as well. Whatever works for you. So. All right, let me back up a little bit and just play what we've covered here so far in this second chorus. All right, we are now at measure 69, and you might want to just take a break before you move forward and with learning more. But at any rate, we're at measure 69 here, and we're back to the main melodic hook of the chorus. And I did something a little bit differently. I actually transposed it up an octave. Now, that doesn't happen during the second chorus in the song, but it does happen in some later choruses in the song, and I really liked it, and I wanted to demonstrate how you could transpose this melody up an octave. So in my version here, I went ahead and did it at this point. So you're going to take this main melody in the chorus, and you're going to transpose it up an octave. So you come all the way up here to, you know, this is 12, 15, 17, 19, 20, and here is your A minor. Think about A right here. So here's G. Think about G. Here's D right here. So this actually will feel this very same as when you were in this position. You're just over a couple of strings and all the way up here to fret 20. And again, you step up in the scale back into the G, G, D, and then this part, this position becomes so all together. All right, then you just go back down to the original position and you continue with the chorus. And notice that it ends the same way that the chorus ends the first time. So here's the whole chorus now, the whole second chorus now, slowed down for you. Here we go. This brings us to measure 77, which I have marked as halftime feel because it kind of changes to a halftime feel. You might start counting it instead of like this. You might start counting, boom, hence the name halftime. It sounds like this. So this is a G power chord up here in D form. Measure 77, so you play, and then you're going to lift your, if you're fingering it this way, lift your ring finger so you got the 5th fret in there. Then hammer back into that. So that was measures 77 and 78. Let me do that again. It's and I actually hybrid picked this. Let me speed it up. So it's like I do. Watch, I get a finger involved here. Not sure why. Maybe, I don't know. That just comes natural to me. You could play it with a pick as well. And then you do the same thing. You can play these same notes like this. And there's the C. So you could go which is what you do in measures 79 and 80. At the very beginning of it, though, you put the thumb in there. So the first part of it is like this. That's how Eric Johnson does it. Same part, different position. Again, it just changes the tone and timbre a little bit, and no doubt that was Eric Johnson's intention. He wanted to give it a slightly different sound, and let me put those two parts together. So this is measures 77 through 80. So you got. And you come into that right after you finish the chorus. So the. You could simplify this if you want. You could just stay here both times, or you could come down here but leave the low G out of it. But that is how Eric Johnson played it. It's kind of tricky to come from this position, then wrap your thumb and get these fingers in place, you know. Especially when you're playing up the tempo, you know. This brings us to measure 81. and this final run and the final few measures of my lesson for you here. And you come all the way up here to the 14th fret, and it sounds like this. So this is played over G, and it's kind of interesting. It's not really G major pentatonic. It's not the full G major scale. I mean, obviously, I guess you could call it G major scale because the notes are in the major scale. But you know, Johnson touches on the major seventh. The you know, kind of reminiscent of the. You got the major seventh in there. You got the ninth in there. So let me just break this up for you. I play this as strict triplets, so it's going to be 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 until we finish it. On the original recording, I think Eric Johnson did something a little bit different. I think there was a extra note or two, and I was having trouble putting it in there, so I just simplified this and made it straight triplets, and it sounds very close, and I'm able to play it well. So that's how I'm going to do it. So let's just get this started. So it's all right. So just follow me and follow the tab. That's on string 1. That's 14, 17, and then here think about G major pentatonic. You're kind of going backward. You don't necessarily have to follow my fingering. I do this, and then my index finger is free to get back here. So it's. But you could go however you want to do it. So that's the first part. And now we're at that bend at the 15th fret on the second string. This is going to be a bend and release. And that's going to take the time value there is that the bend and the release get one triplet. So it's which is kind of clever because by putting a bend and release in there that takes up 2 notes, it gives your picking a break, so you're not constantly having to alternate pick through the whole thing. There's also some slides here at the end, which again, it doesn't break up the flow of the line because you're still playing constant triplets, but it does mean that you don't have to pick every note. And when you see Eric Johnson do all these really fast, long lines, and you wonder, my goodness, how is he keeping up with the picking? Well, he's keeping up because he's incredibly skilled, for one, but he always has clever ways of putting in a sweep or a pull-off or a bend and release so that his right hand gets some little break so it doesn't have to pick through the whole thing. And this is a good example of that, and you'll understand that more as you play this line and you play it up to tempo, how convenient it is to not have to pick every single note. So you've got... So after that bend, you've got bend and release, and then 12th fret, and then back to the 12th fret. So interesting that he chose the major 7th here instead of just staying in the pentatonic box. Major 7th there. So practice just that much, you know. Okay, here's measure 82. So coming from this. Eric Johnson is so good at not only vertical movement, but horizontal movement as well, going position to position and kind of switch, you know, kind of connecting them seamlessly. So this is a good example. I mean, he reaches all the way up here, you know, to the 17th fret to begin with. And now he's down here in the with his index finger at the 10th fret. And I think you do have to... You might be able to put your 4th finger in there if you want. So review just that much. And I'm keeping my pick alternating, you know, down up, down up. And even when I do that bend and release, I think when I pick up with my picking, it's as if I had kept it going. So you could do that as well. All right, next we're going to pick up at the about halfway through, almost halfway through measure 81 at the 11th fret of the 3rd string there. So you're going to play. And there's a slide. Or you might finger it like this. Let me back up to the beginning of measure 82. Or you might get your pinky involved. However you want to finger it. Let's go back to the beginning of this lick. Whoops. Repeat that several times. All right, the end of measure 82, we just ended with that slide. And you come down here to the 9th fret of the 5th string. Again, we're sliding between positions here. And this is followed by the open D string. And then I come down here and I mute the 5th string. So it's... And I think I actually put in a little sweep there, didn't I? Because somehow I'm ending with an upstroke right at the beginning of measure 83, and I'm not sure why. So somehow I got turned around there, but that works. So that's the whole line, and that's where I end. I'll do it one more time for you slowly. So, in fact, I'll give you a count off: 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, again, 4. All right, and then if we speed it up. It's kind of interesting how it kind of gets a little messy at the end, but it just kind of all falls into that G, and then you hear that G power chord ring. And Eric Johnson's version is the same. So I don't know if he intentionally composed it to just have that. I think he did. It kind of just sounds like it's just falling down into place there. So real interesting stuff here. The particular scale tones that he chose to use, and how he covers from the 17th fret, all the way down here to the 7th and 9th fret, all the way down and ends on G. So just look at the range that he covers here, and that's just such a signature part of his style. Instead of staying in one position or shredding in one position now, he would just seamlessly move horizontally across the neck as he would play his lead lines. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this free guitar lesson. I put an awful lot of work into this just because this song is such a good example of using the different types of scale patterns and caged arpeggio patterns that I teach throughout my theory courses. So if you would like to learn more about music theory for guitar, including guitar scales, chords, progressions, modes, and more, if you need to get into the details of all of the stuff that's used in this song, then go to my website at guitar-music-theory.com. That's guitar music theory with dashes in between the words. When you get there, you can join my email list and sign up to take a free tour of my member area, where you can watch several preview videos that are all related to my online fretboard theory instruction. Well, thanks for listening. Be sure to click like on this video and leave me some positive comments below.